Hi, welcome to another episode of Coffee and HEMA with me, Jamie McKeever. I've talked a lot about tournaments recently. I still talk about tournaments a little bit, but taking a bit of a different tack. And I want to explain a bit about sort of why I enjoy tournaments and what is kind of uniquely interesting about tournament fighting that you don't necessarily get from other forms of HEMA. Um, Without meaning to imply that that makes them better or worse in any particular way, just kind of unique and slightly different. And before I get into that, I just want to point out that, as I'm sure everyone who's watching this is already aware, that tournaments have a mixed reputation in HEMA, which is that some people are very anti-tournament. Some people say that tournaments are kind of ruining true HEMA or whatever. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have people who kind of consider to be tournaments to be the only true HEMA, and like everything that people are doing to be geared towards tournament success. It will surprise no one that's been paying attention to my videos so far that I fit fairly firmly in the middle of those two. I consider tournaments to be fun. I enjoy them. I do consider them to have certain things that are important to test, but if you don't want to do them or you don't enjoy them, you don't think they're fun, just don't do them. It's fine. But there is something that you get from a tournament that you don't get from sparring. That I'm not aware of anything outside of doing essentially similar kind of games within your club that would result in the same thing. And actually, to be honest, in the club doesn't work as well. And essentially, for me, the thing that you get from a tournament, uniquely from a tournament, is a really tightly time-boxed fencing puzzle that you have to solve better than your opponent. And what do I mean by that? Well, being very good in a tournament, yeah, at least the first when you start out with tournaments, like especially kind of beginners tournaments, you can kind of just go in and do the thing that you're good at, and it'll probably work, and it'll probably work against most people, and it's kind of fine. You can kind of go into it in an unthinking fashion, and the kind of the further on you get in tournaments, the more like skilled your opponents are, the less likely that sort of approach is to work. And particularly when you're fencing somebody who is kind of closely matched in skill to you, or better than you, of course. It becomes not so much a game of you doing what you're best at, but you try and work out what is it they're doing, what is it, or is that not working, and what can you then adapt in your own fencing in order to overcome whatever they're trying to do against you. And of course, if your opponent is good, they're also doing that as well. So you have to try and puzzle and reason through the different aspects of their fencing to understand what it is and what's good about it and how it's working. Or even if not how it's working, how to avoid setting up a situation where it becomes something that they want to do. And particularly in a tournament format, where especially if it's a tournament format with a lot of people who you've never fenced before, you've got to kind of go in and do that from scratch. Not knowing what their fencing is like, not having any knowledge about them until they start swinging a sword at you. And to my mind, this kind of focusing on trying to work out which of your tools is the best against the tools that they're bringing out, it kind of forces you to use a broader range of skills than you would in something else. And again, that very skill of kind of dissecting the opponent and understanding what they're doing and making a plan on the back of that is quite a specific fencing skill that tournaments are kind of uniquely strong at bringing that to life. You don't have the same sparring, right? Because especially in a tournament, you have some limit that forces you to have to do that fast, right? It might be a time limit, it might be a number of exchanges, it might be that if they get a certain number of points ahead of you, that they've already won. It doesn't, whatever it is, there's something that ends the fight, and you have to successfully do this and do it well enough before that end happens, right? In sparring, even if you're trying to do a similar kind of thing, you will normally just, if your opponent is not adapting, right, you've got an infinite amount of time or until you get tired to kind of do it. So there's none of this kind of time constraint on it, forcing you to do it fast as possible, forcing you to try and adapt on the fly on a regular basis. and more for me in sparring, for at least when I'm sparring, I do a very different thing, which is that I'm being more playful, being more experimental. I don't care so much whether it's successful or not. I'm going to try things that I'm not sure whether they're going to work, just to see whether they work. And if they do, great, I might try them again. Likewise, in sparring, in a tournament, if I see someone's got a major flaw, I'm going to recognize that, exploit it until the cows come home or they fix it. In sparring, I might do it a couple times and then be like, whatever, I'm bored of that now, I'm going to do something else. And I'll probably tell them about it, afterwards, but I'm not going to hammer the point, as it were. Or likewise, I had this when fencing Conor Cancale in Philadelphia when I visited him. I recognized where he was doing well, and in tournament, what I would do is say, okay, this isn't working for me. I'm going to do something. I'm not going to set this up again for him. Right? He did that really well. I don't know how to solve it. I'm not going to set it up. I'll do something else. Right? What I did when I was sparring with him was that instead I deliberately set it up so he could do it against me, and kept trying different defensive techniques to try and see, well, does this work? No. Does this work? No. Does this work? No. And in the end, I got something that kind of mostly worked. I didn't quite get it working as successfully against him in that as I liked, but I'd done it for the first time. And it's a very different puzzle, is my point, right? They're both interesting puzzles, and they're both things I like to do. And I certainly would never say ditch sparring and only do tournaments. It makes no sense at all. But the skills that you're bringing to the table and the puzzles you're trying to solve become very different. And for me, that's one of the reasons why I'll always keep going back to tournaments as long as my body allows. I'll still be doing tournaments, even when I stop doing so well on them, because I really enjoy that forcing you to quickly adapt that you get from it. And frankly, the skill of being able to read an opponent is something which I really enjoy being able to do, and have the opportunity to practice that while they're trying to hit you, and the dual aspects of doing the physical skill, also doing the mental skill that goes with fencing. That's kind of, for me, that's sort of what it's all about. So, long story short, this is why I think tournaments are, an important part of HEMA. I'm glad that they exist. I enjoy them, and I would encourage people to at least try them out. Having said that, there's lots of stuff that goes with tournaments that people really don't enjoy. Some people don't enjoy the stress. Some people get too competitive, or they're not competitive enough, and they don't really care about winning, and so they don't enjoy it. Or occasionally you meet someone in a tournament and they're taking it way too seriously, and they're going too hard, and the judges aren't good at stopping that. Or even, let's face it, the sometimes unfair calls that can really bug people. And I can understand where somebody would say, I don't want to do them because of all those reasons. And it's fine, right? Just don't do something you don't want to do. What does bug me, though, is people looking at tournaments and saying there's nothing of value there, because I think that's just flat out wrong, right? You can not enjoy them. You could not want to do them for various reasons. But even if I'm sparring somebody new, I've never sparred before, it's a different puzzle that I'm trying to solve than the one I'm trying to solve if I'm in a tournament fight with somebody new that I've never fenced before. So there is something valuable from them, whether that thing that is valuable enough for you to warrant all the negatives that you might have with the tournament. If you have them, not all of us do. That's up to you, right? But don't pretend that there's nothing valuable about tournaments, because there absolutely is. Thanks for watching.